Can we get an audio check? Just say your name, please.
John Mueller.
All right, Commissioner Mueller, good evening. Thank you once again for conducting this live question and answer session, as information is one of the most important resources during this crisis. Let's start with a snapshot of current manpower. How many officers are currently out due to coronavirus, and what do Yonkers police service levels look like right now?
Our service levels are pretty good. As the virus makes its way, we all know that it's about 10 to 14 days. So we've had to date 47 COVID-19 positive cases. Most have come back to work. And right now we're running at a percentage of about maybe 5% out with COVID, somewhere within the process. Could be awaiting a test, could be the 4-day incubation period before you can take a test to get an accurate result. But in general, our manpower is in fairly good shape.
How many people have tested positive in the city of Yonkers for COVID-19 and in the county of Westchester?
So the city of Yonkers is a little bit over 3,000 have tested positive COVID-19. We get those numbers every single day from the Westchester County Department of Health. And within the entire county of Westchester, I think we're approaching 21,000 positive COVID-19 cases.
If people need to contact the Yonkers police, how should they do that? And should they be prepared to answer any COVID-related questions?
So yes, the process for contacting the YPD has not changed with the onset of COVID-19 procedures that we have. Same as always. If you have an emergency, you dial 911. If you have a non-emergency where you need to speak to the police, it's 377-7900. We have closed all the precincts right now to mitigate COVID-19 transmission, but we do have one sole location where if you want to walk in to speak to a police officer, you can do so, and that's at 104 South Broadway. We thought that was a good spot to do it. It's within walking distance and of a lot of bus stops and things like that.
Are dispatchers continuing to ask COVID-related questions, and are there any special response protocols in place for when officers do respond to members of the public?
There are. So we are currently asking CDC-based COVID-19 questions for all of our first responders, not just police, but for Empress and Fire Department. Those will ask if you're COVID-19 positive. They'll run a list, and then they'll notify the responding officers if there is someone who is COVID-19 positive or COVID-19 suspected based on symptoms. We conduct, and a lot of police departments are doing this across the country, called doorstop triage, where we try to encourage people to come out of their homes if they can to speak to the officers outside. That way we can keep our officers limit the contact, which is what this is all about right now, and also keep the residents safe that we're looking to assist.
You mentioned that the precincts are currently closed. Are there any plans to reopen police facilities in the near future?
I would say near future, probably no, now that the governor has extended the New York pause. I'd like nothing more to open the precincts. The precincts being available to the public is a huge component of what we do, of making ourselves available. But right now, safety and the health of our residents and our officers is more important. So for now, we have to stay the course, and the precincts will remain closed. But I couldn't tell you how much I would want those precincts to open again.
What about Yonkers Criminal Court and the people who have court dates and ticket dates returnable during these COVID weeks?
So right now, Yonkers courts are closed. And what the court system has done, which is the New York State court system, they have kind of waived any appearances or things like that. So anybody who's got a ticket or an outstanding court case, obviously the courts are closed. You're not expected to attend, and you're not going to be arrested or picked up on a warrant because you didn't make it. Court simply is not in session right now in the Yonkers City Court. But what they'll do is they'll reach out to you when your court date does come up through whatever contact information you gave them. So if you gave them a cell phone, they will reach out by cell. If you gave them an address, you may get a note in the mail. but you'll know when the court needs to see you.
We've received this question a few times. I'm not sure you'll be able to answer, but when are things going to get back to normal?
That's a tough question. We in the YPD, just like the rest of the world, continue to look to our elected officials. Right now, the person rolling the boat in New York State is Governor Cuomo. And, they're going to make decisions based on science and different parameters, along with the federal government. We don't know when things are going to get back to normal. I know we're going to get through it. I just don't know when. I think that's the main thing we all have to realize is that none of us know the time right now, but we do know that we will get through this.
We hear a lot about PPE, personal protective equipment, on the news. Do officers have the equipment they need to keep themselves and the public safe?
They do. So they have a number of different mask options. Obviously, we always concern ourselves with what we refer to as a burn rate. The burn rate deals with how many masks we use a day. Obviously, we don't have an infinite supply of masks, so we're always looking for avenues for new places where we can obtain additional PPE. But right now, we're doing pretty well. So they have surgical masks. They have the N95 mask, and then they also have another M1 mask. In addition to that, depending on certain circumstances, each officer is supplied with a Tyvek suit in the event that they need to go into a heavy COVID-19 environment.
The governor recently announced that starting tomorrow, people must start wearing face coverings or masks if they cannot social distance. And essential workers who have contact with the public must wear them as well. What is your message to the public about wearing face coverings or masks? And will there be enforcement action taken against those who do not wear masks?
So the first part about this question is, what does it mean? And what it means is, if you read the governor's order, it relates itself to what to do if you're outside and you cannot appropriately socially distance. So let's take a couple of examples of that. One example would be being on a bus where you can't get a 6-foot distance between you and someone else, or a supermarket. You can't, create that 6-foot space. In this case, the governor would like everyone to wear a facial covering. It doesn't have to be an N95 mask, doesn't have to be a surgical mask, needs to be a face covering, can even be a cloth covering. The more I'm out there, I see a lot of people with different types of coverings. As far as this executive order is concerned, it's all the same. You can wear a facial covering, you don't need a mask, but if you cannot appropriately socially distance, you have to try to cover your face. And as far as penalties, this is not a criminal matter. This is a civil matter. I think that what we're looking for, like we have been from day one, is that our public is extremely cooperative, and they're going to do the things we need them to do to make sure that everybody's safe. So we don't anticipate having any problems with that.
Regarding social distancing, there have been a lot of comments on social media regarding parties who may or may not be social distancing in public areas. What is the Yonkers Police actively doing about social distance enforcement?
So the Yonkers Police Department has been very proactive in the last few weeks about social distancing enforcement. So we send out a detail of people, officers from every precinct. We highlight areas that we feel like we need to do on a number of different metrics. Could be information that the commanding officer of a particular precinct has received. It could be our calls for service, where we're looking into that data to see what's going on and where if you want to call them hotspots of where people are gathering in an inappropriate way right now that's unsafe for the public. So we send people out. We have card stock, English and Spanish, about what people need to do to socially distance and what we need them to do. It's important to note that we have yet to have to write a single summons or make a single arrest. We found that people are extremely cooperative, which there's no surprise to me with the Yonkers public, how great they are. We really have had a lot of cooperation. What we find is that sometimes people are playing soccer or basketball, and these are things that we can't do right now. These are things that are not going to lend themselves to following the CDC guidelines of social distancing. So we need people to refrain from that activity as far as that is. And it's also worth noting that Mayor Spano continues to leave the parks open, which is good. And this is what we want. We understand that as the weather gets warmer, that people need to get outside. and no one is restricting anyone from getting outside. We just need you to come outside in a responsible fashion. So what does that mean? If you're going to go to a park or you're going to take a walk, socially distance. If you can't socially distance, cover your face with a cloth covering at minimum. It's important to note that the playgrounds are not open in the parks. So the parks are open as long as you can have enough room to spread out, but the playgrounds are still closed because I guess the determination was made that it's just not safe and it's impossible to keep, playgrounds sanitized properly, slides and swings and things like that. So parks are open, make use of them, just please socially distance.
And what about specifically social distancing violations or complaints inside locations such as businesses, restaurants, supermarkets, and even the post office?
So that's part of the social distancing detail that we take place. So what we do is when we send these officers out, they also hit those places. They hit large supermarkets. They take a look to see if the supermarket itself has taken the steps to guide the public on how to socially distance. A lot of different businesses have been creative with this by putting tape X's on the ground to have people stand where they're appropriately separated from each other. So that's a big help for us too. But we found that there too at the supermarkets and other large gatherings that in large result, most people have been doing what they're supposed to be doing, and the stores have been doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if they're not, we go in and we have a conversation. We can issue a summons, we can issue a fine, and we will if we see that people are not coming around. Like I said, we're fortunate enough now that most of the time, all it takes is a conversation.
Do you find that most people are cooperative when it comes to social distancing guidelines?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important not just when we look at the metrics of the social distancing details. So we keep track of everything. How many people did we speak to? How many cards did we issue? How many locations did we hit? When did we hit those locations? Did we hit a location multiple times in one 8-hour period? And what we find is that the message is getting out there, and it's overwhelmingly a real cooperative effort between the YPD and the public. They get it. They're doing what we need them to do, and we're very grateful for that.
So speaking of metrics, we had two major events this year that affects crime. One was in January, the implementation of bail reform, and now obviously the coronavirus pandemic. What do Yonkers crime statistics look like now?
So crime has been down in the last 2.5 months. It started out, as you say, because of bail reform. We believe that bail reform played a large role in crime spikes because that small subset of offender was not being held in jail. And if you believe in recidivism, and I do, it's an overwhelming number of crimes are committed by a very small subset of people. So once those people started getting out of jail, we started seeing a spike in crime. The good news is since then, if you compare our February statistics with January, we were down 7% between February and January. That trend continued into March, where we were down 20% compared to January. And now the first 2 weeks of April, because we look at this every single day, we're down now almost 33%, or at least that's what the projections are showing us. So since January, crime is down 33%. So we're very happy about that. It's just a testament to the great work our officers are doing.
And speaking of crime and crime statistics, how do you anticipate the latest bail reform changes to affect the city of Yonkers?
So it's hard to say, but there was a couple of provisions in there that we felt we were very grateful to our legislative body, Senator Shelley Mayer and Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins in particular, were receptive to the things we needed. So there were two things. The biggest thing was dealing with that repeat offender. So prior to that, a person could get arrested 7 days in a row, maybe multiple times a day, and we'd have to release them every single time. Now, a judge is given the authority once again to consider the fact that a person was arrested on a Wednesday and here they are again on Friday. So something has to change. So now at least we're in a situation where we can at least go before the court. Our prosecutor can go before the court and show the criminal history of the offender and the crime that occurred while they were out and released. So we think that's the biggest thing. And there was also some other good stuff in there in terms of extending discovery requirements from 15 days to 20. So that's helpful. for the public to know that's where we have to have all our ducks in order. We have to make sure that we have everything we need for the case to proceed so the defense has access to what the prosecution's evidence is. And there was also some additional bail placed on certain crimes. So one of the biggest ones that bugged me the most was burglary, second degree, of a residence. So under the bail reform, before it was modified, you could break into someone's house in their living room or in their bedroom, and we had to release you. And I guess the legislature felt that this was not the best idea. There's no more sacred of a place for anybody than their own home. And so now at least we can hold people on that. At least the judge has discretion to make that decision if we can make the case.
So circling back to social distancing, what about the homeless population in Yonkers? We do see a lot of commentary online, especially in the downtown area, a large homeless population and congregating. What is the Yonkers police? Can they do anything to help curb the spread of coronavirus in the subset of the population?
It's a real challenge. And the main challenge is driven by the fact that many of the homeless are mentally ill, severely mentally ill in some cases, and they're also addicted to drugs. And when you have either of those two factors, it's not really, COVID-19 isn't at the top of their priority list of what they need to do. What we've been doing and what we will continue to try to do is to make sure that we can get folks services and shelter and different services they need as much as we can. So we work very closely with Lamont Brown, who's a great partner. He's with the Westchester County Department of Health, but he works hand in hand with our homeless outreach detail, where there's two officers that are specifically trained to deal with the homeless and homeless issues. So it's a huge challenge, but we're doing the best we can with it. And the Westchester County Department of Health has been helpful as well. We're hoping that we can build on that relationship as the pause kind of extends itself, where we can try to reach out and get the homeless population as much help as we can.
The governor extended New York State on pause until May 15th. It's unknown how much longer after that these stay-at-home orders will go on for. Do you have any concerns that as the weather warms, more and more people will start to congregate outside? And how will that affect quality of life issues like noise complaints and aggressive driving and, of course, social distancing?
So, it's a concern that we have. I think it's a concern everybody has. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how the public is going to react. Up to this point, the public has been extremely cooperative. They understand it. I think more frustration comes when a member of the public sees another member of the public not cooperating and not following the guidelines, and then we get that information. So we can only hope that people continue to hold the line and do the things they need to do. Yes, the pause was extended to May 15th, and that's difficult for a lot of people. But I would remind everybody that, we're flattening the curve. We hope to continue to do so. And that the parks are still available. You can still go outside. You can still get fresh air as long as you do it in a responsible way. And so it's my hope that we'll continue. The social distancing details, the fact that now, as time goes on, we're getting more and more information about where our problem areas are in terms of social distancing. We can focus on those areas and perform more outreach. And so it's we've kind of taken our crime model and moved it to social distancing. So we'll start identifying where the hotspots are for people that aren't complying with the rules, when those hotspots are occurring, both in time frames. Is it at night? Is it in the morning? And also which day of the week it is. Sometimes is a Saturday or Sunday more problematic than a Tuesday? Probably. But as things go on, we're by us culling all this data and looking at all these different metrics, we have a pretty good idea of where we're going. We're not scatter shooting. We're refining our view every single time to make sure we're where we need to be to make sure that people follow the rules.
News reports have indicated an increase in scams and frauds related to COVID-19. Some related to unemployment insurance, others related to fake tests. What is your message to the public regarding these type of scams?
It's like any scam. Please be very careful. Be very wary of anybody who calls you up on the phone and asks you for your information. In particular, I was looking at the New York State Department of Labor earlier today, and obviously there's going to be a lot of unemployment issues with the Department of Labor. One of the safeguards the Department of Labor has put in that I've read today was that they will be able to provide you, if they call up to ask a question, with the date that you filed your application for unemployment and the type of application you filed. So that's a good kind of an indicator if the call is legitimate, if they have that information. You're not to provide it, but if they can provide it to you, that's what I'm reading on the Department of Labor website. So be very mindful of all scams that with stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, there's going to be people out there, unfortunately, that are going to try to take advantage of this horrible, horrible situation we're all in together and manipulate people. So we have to be very, very, very vigilant about this.
All right, we had previously asked residents to email questions in advance, so we have several questions to go through. From Nicholas. It's one thing to get the daily COVID stats from New York State. I live in downtown Yonkers. Is there a resource that delineates the impact in different areas of Yonkers, or a more detailed survey in southern Westchester?
That's a good question. I believe that I saw recently, and we'd have to find a way to get that information to you, that we're able to identify zip codes of where the pockets of the most problematic COVID-19 cases are. Or the most density of COVID-19 cases. But I believe it can be broken down by zip code, which would give you an indicator, to Nicholas's point, that it's we were going by neighborhoods.
Liz asks, and this is regarding social distancing in businesses. Commissioner, I'm concerned about the high number of COVID cases in Yonkers, and Stop and Shop in Cross County is not enforcing the limited number of shoppers in their store. I was there this afternoon, and people are shopping on top of each other. Is this a store issue, or is this something that your officers might be able to help with?
We can definitely help with it, and they would be part of our COVID-19 social distancing detail, where they will go there and visit the sites, and they would show up unannounced and make sure that we're following all the rules. A lot of it is communication, it's cooperation with the store managers about what we feel we need, and then having them do it. So, I'm hopeful that, and now that we know you're bringing this to our attention, that we'll make sure that we make those two stores, Stop and Shop in particular, a focus of some of our detail attention.
Gabriel asks, when will the entire Yonkers community be disinfected and sprayed throughout the streets and buildings?
So Department of Public Works came up with a novel idea of converting a fire truck into a disinfecting truck. I don't know how much they can cover in a day. That would be a question for Commissioner Mueller of DPW, who's a great partner of ours. We work hand in hand with Department of Public Works, as we do with the fire department and all the other great city agencies. But I know that they are sanitizing bus stops, park benches, and things like that. Couldn't tell you how long it'll take. And I also don't know, and I think this is a big question for the whole country and the whole public, is how long does disinfection last? So that's another question we have to find out about.
Okay. Claudia has a three-part question. You sort of touched on them, but we'll just repeat it again. What are city officials doing to get the word out and gain control over the situation and ensure the safety of all its citizens?
So the word is out, Claudia, as we said, where our officers are out there engaging the public in areas where people are gathering. So they go to a park, and maybe everyone's doing social distancing there. They're still there to observe it, and a lot of times you'll find our officers say thank you for cooperating. In the case that they aren't, like we found a number of pickup soccer games that we had to disperse the people. Didn't have any trouble with the people about it, but we had to do those dispersing. So, it's a kind of, as the situation comes up, our officers are dealing with it. But like I said earlier, as we're getting more data in about where the most problematic locations are in terms of social distancing. We can focus more on there. As the data comes in, the more we do these details, the more calls for service we get, the more information and input we get from our precinct captains, the better idea we have of a more focused approach.
Are there any plans to build a test center in Yonkers?
So there is a test center. There is one at St. Joseph's Hospital, and I believe there is another one that is going to be a walk-in site at the old Yonkers General. at Park and Ashburton. I call it the Yonkers General. I'm probably dating myself, but that is going to be by appointment only. So we are working with the state right now, as the city of Yonkers is working with the state, to make sure that we get the information out to our public about how because you have to register and you have to make an appointment. So let's just be clear here that this is not just about a testing site where you can walk in. You have to have an appointment. So we're going to have information pushed out. I'm sure the city of Yonkers already has, as has the state, that they'll provide guidance as to how to register for an appointment, and then you can come in and be tested.
Is your office or the mayor's office working with Governor Cuomo directly or indirectly for assistance with these matters?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I know that the city administration, probably Mayor Spano, and if not Mayor Spano himself, one of his top level executives are probably on calls every single day with Governor Cuomo, this New York State government, as well as Westchester County government. So right now what you're seeing is a lot of different, we're talking to each other all the time, and we're sharing information all the time, and we're trying to problem solve all the time. We're trying to allocate resources all the time. So these phone calls that happen every day, all day, there's many of them, is just a way of sharing information and kind of getting a larger, more global view of what's happening across the state.
Some Facebook comments, one regarding quality of life issues and noise control. Are there any plans to bring back quality of life details or to assign specialized details as the spring turns into summer?
We certainly would take it into consideration. And again, we are evidence-based. We follow the data. We go where the evidence takes us. And so if we see this as a growing problem, and where would we draw that data from? Well, we would have calls for service, where how many calls did we get for a given situation at a given location. So we are always looking at these things. And if things do rise to the level of, that we identify this as becoming a real problem, a persistent problem, a consistent problem, then we would probably send out a detail to handle it.
You mentioned earlier that the parks are still open. However, the courts and playgrounds are closed. What should members of the public do if they see people playing basketball games or soccer games or using the playground equipment? Should they call the police?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we all need to do this together. We all need to follow the rules. The more we adhere to the rules and follow the CDC guidance, the sooner we're going to get through this. So yeah, you can call 377-7900, and we will definitely dispatch a car. And more importantly, we'll take that information down, because then this is another data point that we can take and say this was a problem. We then have the location, we have the time, and so that helps us kind of focus our strategy as we go forward.
The governor was on television the other day working with other governors in the region about reopening the economy. Is the same true for police departments? Are you working closely with neighboring police agencies and jurisdictions regarding COVID-19 issues, enforcement, or how to handle the situation together?
Yes. So we are part of a Westchester County Police initiative. Great partners we have with the county, Commissioner Gleason, Chief Hodges, Lieutenant Brian Hess, where they run Real-Time Crime Center for the entire Westchester County, for all the police departments, and they do a tremendous job. So what they have organized is what we call the MAC system, the Multi-Agency Coordination System. And that allows the county to intake all of this different data and information from all over the county, from the Bedford Police, Mount Vernon Police, Yonkers, Mount Kisco, you name it, every police department in Westchester, and they distill it, and then they push it out to everybody, and then we discuss issues. So it's just a great way of us talking to each other and seeing, like, how do my absentee rates look in the Yonkers Police Department versus the Peekskill Police Department? Are there avenues of applying and receiving more PPE equipment? How do we go about doing that? So it's a real great coordination approach that the county has. And like I said, under Commissioner Gleason and Chief Hodges and Lieutenant Brian Hess, they're just doing a great job of keeping us all in tune with each other about what we're doing, and it goes beyond just, is it equipment? Is it this? It's just talking about strategy in general. So everyone is just, it's a brainstorming session. Say, what's working in Yonkers? Maybe it would work in Mount Vernon. Maybe something is working in New Rochelle that would work in Yonkers. So by us brainstorming and talking together each day, we not only have a good idea what's happening around us, but we can also share information. So it's a good, great avenue of information in two different ways.
Regarding calls for service, have you seen an increase or a decrease in calls for service and COVID-related calls for service?
Yes. So when we look at our data, we look at our data in every 24-hour period. And what we're finding is that we have essentially, and it's no surprise, a pre-COVID calls for service rate. And then we have a post-COVID calls for service rate. So there's a lot of different things that go into that, but some of the numbers that we're seeing jump up a little bit are loud noise complaints, anecdotal information probably, but I would guess that it's mostly related to the fact that people are playing loud music in their homes, and everyone's in their home right now, so it can get annoying. So that's another plea that I have, and the YPD has, and the city of Yonkers has to all the residents is, please think about your neighbor. Please find ways to cooperate. Please, if you have to listen to music that loud, just get headphones. I mean, think about your neighbor. Think about that this is a stressful time. This is a frightening time. This is an uncertain time. So we need to really be mindful of each other. And so we're hoping that things like that, disorderly complaints, loud music complaints, we take into consideration how we can help our neighbors.
As we reach the 30-minute mark, Commissioner, do you have any final statements before we sign off?
Just thank you to our outstanding Yonkers Police Department, our partners in the fire department and DPW, and the amazing volunteers we have at OEM. I could go on and on. Empress, the mayor's office, Parks Department, just tremendous partners. We're all in this together. We're all working hard. Thank you so much to the public who is very supportive to us, who is cooperating with us, who is understanding the need here. They get it. And they're making our job easier, which is really great. And also thanks to all our amazing healthcare workers, the doctors, nurses, and all these great healthcare professionals in St. Joe's and St. John's. And I'd also be remiss about a lot of the unsung heroes in this whole COVID-19 environment. People that are delivering food, people that are driving buses, people that are delivering meals. I mean, you name it, life does go on in some strange way. And there are so many people out there that are putting themselves at risk by delivering food, working for Amazon, working for UPS. I could go on and on, driving cabs, things like that. And so we have to be thankful for them too. They've done an amazing job in a very challenging environment. And if you have a few extra bucks and you can tip someone a few extra dollars and it's available, I highly suggest it, because those folks are really working hard right now and they need it. So just everybody's pulling together. I mean, I think it's the great, American experiment that when times get tough, we do come closer together. We do appreciate each other more. We are more mindful of each other, and I'm seeing it. And although I hope that this goes over and as quickly concluded as possible, there are some really amazing stories about people and how we conducted ourselves during this time, and I hope that it continues. I'm sure it will, but it's a great point.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Good. No.